Welcome to this video module looking at Progress Test English and how it fits in the pupil approach to assessment. In this module I'm just going to be looking at the reports. I'm going to step through the reports and look at the format and content of them and a kind of first level look at how some of that data might be used. So, turning to the Progress Test series, as I say, this is Progress Test English, and that's part of 3 assessments that make up the series. Progress Test Maths and Progress Test Science coming soon. So there are actually separate video modules looking both at the maths and the science elements of the series. If you'd like to know more about actually running the assessment via the TestWise online account, there is again a separate video module looking at the setup, administration and running of reports and guides on the use of TestWise in general. So this module will be just looking particularly at the reporting. Like the rest of the series, we've made a decision to go with reports that are tailored for a particular audience, and they have a standard format of a group report for teachers and then individual reports for students, parents and on students also for teachers. So first, let's have a look at the group report for teachers. This isn't entirety, I've just taken a couple of lines from it. But we have student name, obviously, standardized age scores. That's the common reporting scale that we're using throughout all these assessments. And there is a video module just looking at standardized age scores and how they relate to a national distribution, also available. For this assessment, we are also reporting on an English national curriculum level. We are aware that those levels have been removed as a compulsory reporting element, but we're also aware that a number of schools are using them until, as it were, the dust has settled somewhat into what system they're going to go with in the future. And also they do form a useful reference point to a previous framework. So certainly for a year we will be continuing with those before we look again as to what would be best for our customers in terms of mapping. Within the group report we're also producing this scatter graph here, where this is new to the Progress Test English as opposed to Progress in English. We look here at the 2 separate parts of English ability. One we're calling reading comprehension and the other we're calling English skills. English skills is made up of the spelling, punctuation and grammar aspects of the assessment, and reading comprehension is looking at the 2 forms of reading and comprehension for narrative and non-narrative. We've split them apart to report on so that we can get a greater insight as to what kind of problem areas there might be or strengths of individual students. If we just reported on one overall figure, I think we'd be missing out on quite a bit of detail. They're represented in this scatter graph where the purple on this particular one shows that there is a higher reading comprehension score differential as opposed to higher English skills, which is the more kind of orange area to the right. If they fall within the white area in the middle, there is really no statistical difference, relative difference in those 2 areas of performance. The more they are to the top right of that scatter graph, the higher the overall English ability, and bottom left-hand corner, the lower English ability. In terms of looking at year-on-year progress, what we've been doing is looking at using the standardized scores to demonstrate progress from one year to another. The standardized age scores are always referenced to a national sample, so that if an individual student gets the same standardized score on an assessment that is for 11-year-olds and they get the same standardized score on an assessment for 12-year-olds a year later, they've actually made a full year's progress. Because when they were doing the assessment for age 11, 100 meant they were on the national average for an 11-year-old's performance. And on the assessment for 12-year-olds, again, if they get 100, that would mean they were on the national average performance for English for 12-year-olds. So in that year, they had made a full year's progress. We can show this in this kind of table here, where we have one level of a progress assessment against the next year's progress assessment. The one that's actually shown on the screen is for progress in English rather than PTE, because we're using real data here. But the principle is exactly the same, and it's in fact it's shown in a more straightforward way for PTE, which we'll have a look at in a minute. But here we can see that those two scores are compared, and the difference in terms of standardized age scores is shown. And we can do that for all of these subgroups, these demographics if you like, or focus groups, so that we can really track those that we need to keep a special record of. I said that it was even clearer on PTE, and this is where it's shown in that sense. Here's an individual student report for teachers, and we can see in the top table their particular scores within English skills and reading comprehension. They're shown as stay-nines or stanines. But also, if they have done the assessment in a previous year, we actually just clearly show which progress category they fall into. And this particular individual falls into the average progress category. In terms of a profile summary, there is a scatter graph there also showing where their particular difference, their relative difference between the English skills and their comprehension skills lie, and in this case it lies towards English skills rather than in the reading comprehension. We can go deeper than that though, because we can look within English skills. I said it was spelling, punctuation and grammar. We can separate those out, looking at spelling and grammar and punctuation separately, number of questions, the percentages that were scored correct by the individual set against the national sample. So it really is looking at strengths and weaknesses reference to the national sample. And then similarly, reading comprehension, but now split into the narrative and non-narrative aspects of that. And even further down, even within the reading comprehension, we're able to split it down into the types of questions that make up those reading comprehension sections in terms of retrieval and inference and authorial technique, again referenced to the individual student against national sample. Just like the cognitive abilities test, we've also trying to get away from simply just having numbers. So where those numbers and those relative differences in numbers, we've actually set that alongside a database of information that we've worked with experts in the field to create this database of questions and hints that will go alongside those particular absolute scores and relative scores to suggest what those levels of performance might actually mean in terms of the individual's performance day to day, and how we might work with them to support strengths and to work on relative weaknesses. We've also, just as I say, in terms of just like the cognitive abilities test, we are creating formats for parents as well. We feel it's very important to involve all the stakeholders in this. The more people that are taking on board data about their child's education, the better chance we have of working together to support that performance. And on this one you can see the particular score in overall. Now the one shown, I got on the right, please be aware this is a progress test maths report, but that is just an example of the format. It will be exactly like that for progress test English, except where it talks about profile with that single bar, there will be two bars, one for the English skills and one for the reading comprehension. But that information plus information of the narrative style will be available also for parents. It's very important, I think, that they also know what it is we're trying to achieve with their child and how they can support the process. If you would like to see how the data from this progress test English can be used alongside other standardized data, we have modules that actually include data from a number of different assessments. There are combination reports that combine the data from the cognitive abilities test and attainment assessments, Plus, we also have an illustrative data story that looks actually at a number of different data sets from attainment, ability and learning barriers for an individual, so you can see how a number of assessments data can be combined to support the whole pupil approach to assessment.